name is Marjorie Flory, and I basically am a journalist. I worked for many years for Reader's Digest as an editor. My first job was with the French Cultural Services. I was a French major in college and spent my junior year in Paris. So when I was looking for a job, I wanted to get into journalism or writing or editing or something like that, and the vocational office at college wasn't particularly interested in that. I mean, they didn't think I didn't have the background. My background was in French, not English, so my first job was with the French Cultural Services, which was a branch of the French Embassy, but in New York City, and that was interesting. But then I finally got a job with Reader's Digest as a researcher, which meant basically checking facts for accuracy, and then I became an editor, and which for the Digest, because it was a digest, it meant condensing articles for the most part. Sometimes they'd be nonfiction books, which we always had a book supplement in the magazine, so I worked on that quite a bit. It was really through my father, a friend of my father's who worked for the Digest, and so I'm ashamed to say it's not a thing I did particularly, but that was the kind of work I wanted to do, and that was interesting. My early schooling was in London, to a girls' school. Then we came over here. I spent a year in Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa, where my mother was from, went to public school there. Then we came to New York, where my father moved from London. I think it was a friend of my mother's, with two different friends of my mother. Since she hadn't lived in this country, she sort of depended on her American friends to tell her what to do. So the first suggestion was Chapin School, which didn't work out very well, and then Horace Mann Lincoln, which I did enjoy very much, and then I went to Smith College and spent my junior year in Paris, which was the best part. I did take some graduate courses at Columbia, but I never got an advanced degree. Well, my father was a journalist, and I always admired him and wanted to follow in his footsteps in a way. And I loved reading, and so I'd always sort of wanted to do something in the field of reading, writing, editing. After I retired from the Digest, I retired very early, and I did some freelance work after that. And one of the things I worked on was with a college friend. We wrote a book together. Actually, there were four of us about movies, a video guide, and it was called Real Life, R-E-E-L, R-E-A-L, or I forget which way around it was, but it's funny, I said to somebody who I was interviewing in connection with that, I said that it's called Real Life, which is about movies, as you can imagine. And he said, well, either that or fishing. When I was at the Digest, I edited a column called News from the World of Medicine. So I'm sort of proud of being able to explain scientific things to the layman, learn about things that I knew nothing about, and explain them to ordinary people. One of the people I admire most was Eleanor Roosevelt. I like to see her statue down on Riverside Park. I read the book about her, and I think she had to go through a difficult time, and she did a lot for other people. I also looked up to my older brother, who died quite young. He was always interested in exploring new things and not being discouraged by, I mean, we grew up in England, and one of his teachers at school, you know, they were asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, well, I want to be in the American Navy. And his British schoolmaster said, there is no American Navy, there's only the Royal Navy. And I always sort of thought if he hadn't had that challenge, he might have just a childish dream that he never did, but he did, in fact, go to Annapolis, became a naval officer, Navy pilot, and died sadly in a crash. He never went to war. It was at the time of the Korean War, but he never got to to Korea. One of the things I try to tell myself is not to be afraid to ask questions, not to be afraid of what you don't know, because I remember a lecturer I went to in Paris who said he was once gave some talks in Japan, and he said, you know, the Japanese are very afraid of losing face. So when I once gave a talk and then I asked, any questions? And he'd just done that to us, and none of us asked questions either. But then he said in Japan, of course, everybody's afraid to ask questions because if they ask a stupid question, they'll lose face. What if they ask a question that the lecturer can't answer? Then he'll lose face. But we know there are no stupid questions, and professor can't know everything. Nobody can know everything. So I thought that was a very nice lesson. Well, as I say, I think trying to learn as much as possible about the world and other people and other cultures is very important, and strive for peace.